Hello everyone, our group will be presenting to you topic 7 today, and we will talk about Shoshana Zuboff and her thoughts on surveillance capitalism. First, I'm going to give you a quick background about who is Shoshana Zuboff. Zuboff was born on November 18th of 1951, and she's an American author, Harvard professor, social psychologist, philosopher, and scholar. She is often referred to as the Karl Marx of her time. She has wrote several books and participated in distinct documentaries and interviews throughout her career. Now, I will address the first of three important questions on the documentary regarding Zuboff and surveillance capitalism. The question is, what does Shoshana Zuboff mean by surveillance capitalism? First of all, Zuboff considers that surveillance capitalism refers to the unilateral claiming of private human experience and data as free prediction products. Moreover, she refers to certain tech companies such as Google, Facebook, among others, and describes how these companies have gathered our personal data, likes, dislikes, and preferences in order to modify and significantly influence our behaviors. She argues how serious the consequences could be for freedom, democracy, privacy, and human rights. She even describes this phenomenon as a new economic order that has been taking place. Surveillance capitalists are those that sell certainty to businesses who would like to know exactly what potential customers do, what they like, what they don't like, and more about their personal preferences. This is useful for businesses in order to be able to offer exactly what the customer wants and get the maximum they can in exchange. Companies do this through the creation of targeted ads, for example. Finally, I will address how companies carry out this kind of behavior. Big companies are able to carry out this kind of behaviors due to the fact that they have monopolized how they are perceived. Additionally, the information that these companies have is privately and securely managed. There are also NDAs that help prevent the leakage of the information. Finally, considering the fact that vertical organization is used and taking into account that the CEOs of these companies are usually the major shareholders, it is very easy for these companies to carry out these practices without getting in legal trouble.
From watching the video, we were able to find several alternatives through the examples that she talked about. For example, the legal scholars in the University of London who analyzed the privacy policy and how we give consent. The documents used were ones of a thermostat, where they saw how the thermostat would collect data and send it to a third party, and the third party would send it to another third party. While doing so, no company would take the responsibility of what the other company would do with this specific data. We still have the option not to send this data, but the product won't function well. This would lead us to our first alternative. The first alternative that we have is being aware and reading the privacy contracts before signing. This can be done in several ways, like blocking the tracking cookies that we usually allow when we enter a website. What can also be done is avoiding signing or accepting as much as possible. An example can be the website that asks if they can use your location by having a pop-up which states the website would like to use your current location. And then they would give you you would answer with allow or don't allow. We can also see how Zuboff does not use Google Apps or Facebook or any chat encrypted app. With this being said, we can move on to another alternative, which is using apps like chat encrypted apps to prevent our chats and pictures from being taken by the government surveillance programs. This limits the amount of information being shared to these companies and gives users a little bit more privacy. Not mentioned in this video, but examples of these apps could be iMessage or Telegram. Zuboff later on elaborates in the video about what she would do if there was an absolute need to use Google. In this case, if it is very necessary to use and very difficult to avoid, an alternative can also be using various layers of encryption and location configuration before going to Google search. This would be done through the use of VPN, and this would send all your data traffic to a secure server in another country. In 2019, after Mark Zuckerberg announced that the future is private, several individuals in California filed a class action suit demanding that Facebook reveals the data that they made available to Cambridge Analytica in order to see if they had been targeted by Cambridge Analytica. What happened in this case was that Facebook Counsel argued that people who use Facebook and post on the platform have no expectations of privacy that can be legitimately claimed. With this being said, we can see that citizens empowerment can be an alternative where individuals can file a class action suit against companies who fail to keep the privacy of the individual. Throughout the video, we see how in other parts of the world we are seeing what Facebook's true intentions are, and it is becoming clearer by day what their intentions are. But this is gonna we need whistleblowers in order for this to actually happen. This means that another alternative would be whistleblowers that would share the information on how the companies would work. An example mentioned in the video was Chris Wiley, who told the world about Cambridge Analytica and the method they used to manipulate American voters, and much more. Finally, government regulations and collective actions would be necessary. One of the alternatives that Zuboff suggested was not being naive in order to preserve our democratic future and freedom in the upcoming and future generations. This would also include the checks and balances that would be needed to move forward. In a wider scale, governments can intervene just like how the European Union has legislation which fines and prosecutes businesses. For example, the European Union already fined Google $1 billion since they were abusing their monopoly power. Also, governments can set regulations for fair competition, or GDPR, which is General Data Protection Regulations. This means that people in power would fight the big corporations when they realize that data is being stolen from their users.
Next, we're going to see the feasibility of the alternatives that Zane just presented to us. The first one is being aware and reading the privacy contracts before signing them, which we don't think that is very feasible, in the sense that no one is going to be reading thousands of contracts for every single product, service, or application that is present in their life. The second one is the use of chat encrypted apps. And we think that it's very feasible, it's possible, as we would only need to change, for example, from WhatsApp to Telegram, but it only tackles one part of the problem. So it will be useful, but it doesn't cover the whole spectrum of companies taking advantage of gathering data from our lives. The third one is using a VPN, as well as the second one. It's very feasible, it's possible, and it's convenient, but it doesn't tackle the whole problem, which we think that combining this with different kinds of alternatives will be a solution to avoid companies stealing our data behind our backs. The fourth one is the citizen empowerment, which we think that is very useful, and it's one of the best alternatives, in the sense that the individuals as a group, or even the society itself, can bring into justice these companies that are taking advantage of the situation. Although it's not easy, as you will need to start legal procedures and take these companies in front of a court, we think that is very feasible, as we saw that in the video they presented a case, a class action suit that happened in California and was very successful. The fifth one is the whistleblowers, that we don't think is very feasible, in the sense that not many employees and directors are okay with betraying their companies, bringing them to justice and exposing every single thing that they do. And therefore, we don't think that this is feasible in that sense. The sixth one, the last one that we recognize from the video, is the government regulations and collective actions, which we also think is one of the best alternatives in order to protect the society from these companies that take advantage of gathering data. But as we saw with other videos, with past presentations, this is very difficult to implement, we will need a huge collaboration from governments, from even international organizations, in order to be able to have this alternative present in our lives. As we have seen in the European Union, they passed the GDPR, which it was a huge step, but sometimes these solutions are not implemented in the right way. So it will mean a huge effort, but for sure it will be an alternative that would help solve the problem. But now it's your time to discuss. So we thought of 4 different questions that you can discuss in the forum. The first one is, do you think it's possible to live connected with anyone and maintain the benefits of the internet without paying the price of surveillance capitalism? The second one is, would you give up all the benefits from the internet as well as being connected with your friends and family if that meant that big tech companies will not sell your information and you will be able to keep your privacy? The third one is, what methods would you implement in order to prevent surveillance capitalism as an individual and as a society? And the fourth one is, do you think it's ethical for companies to capture our data and sell it to other companies, even if you agree to the terms and conditions of the product and technology, which relates with one of the alternatives, that you have to read thousands of contracts related to your privacy and the way that the companies proceed. So do you think that this is ethical, or would you change it? Thank you very much for your attention. We hope that you enjoyed the presentation. We're excited to see your responses and your discussion in the forum.